the founder and CEO of Silverback Coffee of Rwanda. He is an entrepreneur par excellence, and you'll take us through your journey tonight. I want you to take us back to early years, East Africa. You have an incredible father, an incredible mother, siblings. Paint the picture for us.
Okay, siblings. We have 5 siblings, 1 girl, 4 boys. We are born and raised in Rwanda, but we moved out of Rwanda in the very early years to the point where we basically knew nothing. So we moved from Rwanda and moved to Uganda because at the time we obviously had the Tutsi and the Hutu. Myself, I'm a Tutsi, even though now in Rwanda we don't distinguish ourselves as either Hutu or Tutsi. You're just Rwandan. But at the time, yes, you had an ID card that specified who you are, where you lived, and all that. So we fled from Rwanda to Uganda. I lived there for a little bit, and at the time they had, I think, President Obote or Idi Amin, I don't remember, one of the two, who was in cahoots with the president at the time of Rwanda, who were trying to eradicate all the Tutsis. So we then fled from Uganda and moved to Kenya. Lived in Kenya and Uganda pretty much the same amount of years, but we were always on the move, to the point where our parents had even taught us how to act like we were locals, to speak the language. They taught us how to speak the languages, how to know what each tribe did and where they were from, so that when people saw us, they thought we were locals. We were constantly in the move, we were constantly hiding. My mom and dad were constantly leaving and coming back, not telling us everything that was going on. But then in Kenya is where we settled for most of the time. And in the late 80s, it started getting a little bad for Tutsis. So we had to then find a way to either move to somewhere else or stay. A lot of Tutsis would come in and out of my parents' home. We would see people who would come and leave. They would stay with us. Sometimes our parents would give us the little that we did have to others. So we were constantly, as an older person today, I understand what they were doing, but at the time, it was just chaotic in the house. It was constantly people. People would come in, stay the night, leave. And they were always considered, that's your uncle, that's your auntie, that's your uncle, that's your auntie. So everybody was an uncle and auntie. But we didn't understand the gravity of the danger we were actually living in at the time. Some of our relatives had moved to Tanzania and started basically like a guerrilla warfare, trying to go back home. And the only way they could do it was by going back to Uganda and helping the Uganda government take over and return some of the Tutsis and Hutus, that moderate Hutus, to go back to Uganda. So some of the people we knew, some of my own uncles, went basically into guerrilla warfare, went back to Uganda and lived in Uganda. And then while in Uganda, there was rumblings again of find all these Tutsis that were helping this movement. And unfortunately for us, my dad was one of the people that was on the list. So he had to flee and was moving from place to place, Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and was always on the run. But then at some point, the genocide started in 94. And it was killings like you can't believe. We knew of them, we had to flee, but lucky for me, a friend of my dad's who lived in Kenya and worked in the US Embassy had mentioned it to my dad, hey, send me one of your kids and he can stay with me. So I was fortunate enough to get to the US 3 months before the genocide started.
So how old were you then?
I was 15 and a half.
And you're going to live with a man who your dad knows, but you don't know.
Correct.
And maybe you didn't even know the whole situation, the geopolitical situation that was happening.
Correct. I just knew that, hey, you're going to go to the US to study. That's what the story was.
Right.
But at the time I was also told, remember, always say you're from Uganda. Just say you're from Uganda. And I was like, why? Just say you're from Uganda. We had all these rules that we had to live by. according to our
keep you
parents.
safe.
Just basically, it was like more like a survival mode thing. You do this, you'll be okay. You do this, you'll be okay. So I came to the U.S. And then realized that I couldn't go to school because you have to come to, when you come to the U.S., you have to come with a student visa. You can't come to the U.S. and then just go to school. You have to be accepted first by a school. So I had to then go back.
Oh, wow.
But then going back was problematic.
Right.
Because I couldn't just land in the airport. So the thing was, I was going to land in Burundi, and then I was going to take a car from Burundi across the border into Uganda.
Wow.
So I did that as a 15-and-a-half-year-old with a taxi driver going from Burundi to Uganda. I don't know where I am. And we had to cross the border by a certain time because they closed the border.
Yes.
And you can't cross. No money, taxi driver, I don't know where I'm going to stay. So we made it. We made it. And then my uncle met me on the other side and took me to Uganda. Applied for the visa, got the visa,
paperwork.
did the paperwork, took a couple months, got back to the US. Meanwhile, I hadn't seen my dad, except for when I was going back through Burundi, I met him at an airport. Someone said, "Come here." And I followed him rather, and saw my dad. And I hadn't
How did
seen
that feel?
I hadn't seen him for almost 2 years. And we spoke. He said, "Are you good? Are you okay? Is everything okay?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Where are you? Where are you?" The more I asked, he wouldn't answer. He just asked me how I am.
Yes.
And I said, "Okay, Mom will call you soon." He took off, and I took off, and got to the U.S. and started school. But at the time, once I started school, I really couldn't focus because all I could see was CNN. All I could see was killings and killings and killings and killings and killings.
Right.
Not knowing where my uncles were, my brothers were. It was just chaotic.
Right. And you're still a young kid at this point in a new country.
Right.
Right.
And I'm trying to study and make something of myself, and everything I had seen on TV, America, play sports, make money. So my goal was like, go make money and help my parents. Go make money, help my parents.
Yes.
And then at some point, I got word that my dad was okay. And then at the time, the Kagame, who's the president today, the guerrillas that had gone from training in Tanzania, helped Uganda take over their current government, had then stopped their killings in Rwanda. I think it was in July, almost think July 4th almost, like Independence Day here. And then everything stopped. As soon as it stopped, my entire family moved to Rwanda to basically help clean up.
Yes.
I mean, from dead bodies to bullets to just society and just bring people back together. Meanwhile, I'm in the U.S., so I spoke to my parents, and at the time you had to use calling cards.
Oh, the calling card, yes. Type in all the numbers.
You scratch off,
and,
You scratch off and find a payphone that would work, and then you talk, and then they'll say, "You have 2 minutes." I'm like, I haven't spoken to anybody. I just lost my 20 minutes. And at the time, I didn't have any money, so
Right.
I had to make sure that it worked.
Yes.
So once you find a payphone that worked for me, I always made sure I used that payphone. And then
you
I
can't
found
afford to mess around.
No.
Right.
So all I kept hearing was like, "Look, you're the eldest boy, make it work. So we can send your sister there, so we can send your brothers there. You have to make it work." So then I went to almost in a different mindset of survival mode. Do this, or your family's in trouble. So everything I did wasn't just for me. It was for my sister, my mom, my brothers, my cousin.
Right.
I'm in America.
Right.
I can't go wrong.
Right, right.
And
you can't go wrong, but it sure wasn't easy.
No, it was not. I mean, being in America was great, but it was almost also painful because what I found in America was everybody was busy. The one thing I had realized was that there was always one person in a car. In Africa, you will not find one person in a car.
No.
It's 4 or 5 people. And
this is actually where Uber started, I'm sure. Because buying one seat in an African taxi has been a situation for decades.
For decades.
Right.
Yeah. And I would only say, why is there only one person in each car? And then I soon
So
realized,
lonely.
yeah, but I realized everybody had their own agenda, and they're busy doing them, you know. In Africa, like, hey, come on, drop you off. So that's why people say, are you on African time? Because you drop this one off, you talk, you drop that one off. By the time you get to where you're supposed to go, you're like an hour late.
But you've done so many good things.
But exactly.
You've done so many good
But
things.
you've done so many good things.
Yes.
So I quickly realized, like, okay, there's no time to talk. It's just do, you know? And I had to figure it out, but I had to figure it out with no money, no social security number, no credit, no cash, nothing.
So, what was a turning point in terms of a break? You're still in your late teens, right?
Yeah. And I first I get like, because I'm at a junior college, and a college recruit comes to recruit another player on our team, but
What are you playing?
at El Camino College at the time.
But what sport?
Basketball.
I mean, I just didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't want the obvious to go unnoticed.
Right.
Okay.
Basketball. But the funny thing is, when I came, I didn't come to play basketball. I came. I was studying engineering, and I was studying engineering, and everyone was like, "You should play basketball. You should play basketball." Now I knew of basketball, and I knew how financially rewarding it was, and I was already in love with sports.
Yes.
So I said, okay, I'm gonna do basketball. So I started playing basketball, teaching myself. I would literally play 8 hours a day and go to school. So a recruit came to recruit another player on a team at El Camino, and I ended up getting a scholarship to Arizona State. But when I got there, they had just gone into NCAA suspension.
Oh.
So
Bad timing.
that meant that I had to be sidelined and say, okay, we'll give you financial aid. But as a foreign student, you can't go on financial aid. The reason they give you a form called an I-20 form is because either somebody has sponsored you that they're going to pay, or you're paying yourself. Not the school, not the institute is not paying.
Right.
Yeah. So coach called another school called Grand Canyon University and said, hey, I have a student here who we just went on NCAA suspension. He's lost his scholarship. Can you take him? So I literally went from class to Grand Canyon in one day. And signed some papers and got a scholarship. Then that was in Arizona, but I hated Arizona because I had gotten a taste of LA. even though Arizona was 100 times better than where I just came from.
Right.
Talk about getting spoiled quick. But, so I finished school. I graduated. I was like, well, I don't want to stay here just to play basketball. I'm gonna go back to LA.
Yes.
I had friends there, but. You have friends, but when you're living with them and they're paying for everything, the friendship kind of ends quickly.
Yeah.
You know, and I found myself being by myself because nobody wanted to lend me that $20 or that $10. So
They're keeping their distance.
Right. So a friend of mine offered me a job with his uncle, construction stuff. So I said, hey, come on the weekends and just demo, and I'll give you cash. I was like, yes. So I started doing that.
Yes.
While I was doing that, a funny opportunity came along. I had bought a car.
Right.
I had saved and bought a VW Jetta.
Were you driving by yourself?
Driving by myself.
Okay.
You could see my knee, my head, my knee. But I didn't care.
But it was yours.
I had a car.
Yes.
And I was by myself, like you said. So, so I'm driving, and this gentleman on Sunset Plaza, waving me down, and I'm like, okay. And everybody had always told me, there's a lot of crazies in the U.S., But to me, everybody was crazy because they talked fast. I was like, I couldn't understand. Yeah, walk fast.
Ate fast.
Yeah. So, he waved me down, and he said, "Are you an actor? Are you an actor?" I go, "No, I'm not an actor." He said, "You should be an actor. You should be an actor." And I go, "No, that's not for me." And he said, "Pull over." So I just pulled over.
Yes.
And he said, "Look, I'll get you some headshots." I'm like, "What's that?" He said, "You just take a picture of your face and come on, we'll take a picture of your face, and I'll send you out." I'm like, I don't know, it's not for me. But I was so desperate for cash.
Sure.
I would
How could you
do
say no?
anything.
Right.
I was gonna do anything. And he said, "Look, we took 60 pictures, I'll send them out, and if you don't get a job, don't worry about it. But if you get the job, you have to sign with my agency. I'm like, sure, no problem.
Right.
You know, you paying for them, no problem. So a couple of weeks go by. He gives me his card. Sorry, he gives me his card. I say, I'll call you. I don't call. But I became so desperate that I was cleaning out the car and I saw his card, so I called him.
Yes.
And he said, okay, come. We took some pictures, and he started sending me out. And he sent me out to something, and I honored it and went.
Yes.
But I really didn't want to go because I knew I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And I go and
But you felt like you had no choices.
Right. So I get to this location, and it's like at a basketball court, and there's all these other people, but you know, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So I sign, and there's a guy saying, sign here. So I go and I sign my name.
Yes.
But as I'm waiting, everybody's talking to themselves. And I couldn't understand why. Yes. I couldn't figure out. They would stand against the wall and they really go off. And I'm thinking, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
And you had so many odd experiences with Americans already.
Right.
You thought, well, just add this to the list.
Right. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
okay, what am I supposed to be doing? So I plan on leaving and just tell a lie that
Yes.
I went, but nothing happened. As I'm leaving, they call my name.
Not so fast.
Not so fast. So I go in, and then the guy, you know, he's giving me a little pep talk. Be yourself, just do your thing. I'm like, okay. I've read, yeah, exactly. I've read no lines at the time. I didn't know. I walk in, and there's a long table just like that, and there's all these guys sitting on the other table, flicking their pen, tapping, like looking at me, like,
Yes.
okay, get on the line, and I see a line, and tell us your name and go at it. So I tell them my line. I tell my name
Yes.
on the line, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and they're like, feel free to start whenever. I don't start. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to
doing?
do?
Yeah.
They're like, did you read the lines? I'm like, what lines? And they yell at some guy, and he comes and he takes me out. He goes, did you read the lines? I go, well, I know what you're talking about. This is my first time. So he gives me this paper, and he's like, go read these lines and memorize them and come back. Then I get why everybody was talking to themselves. You know?
It didn't seem so odd anymore.
Right. So I started reading them. I literally wait another hour until everybody's done, almost. Then I go back in, and I read my lines, and they go, okay, thank you, bye. And I leave. I think a couple of weeks go by, and at the time I had a pager. That was my means of communication.
You're taking us back. Calling
Yeah.
cards, pagers.
Yes, I had a pager. So my agent said, just page me and call, when I page you, just call me collect. So I recognize his number. So
Yes.
I call him collect. He goes, Jack, you got the job. I'm like, what job? What are you talking about?
You'd forgotten it. It
Yes.
was way,
Oh.
in the past.
You got the job. Oh, you need to come in real quick so I could, sign some papers. I'm like, what job? What are you talking about? And that's when I was like, wow, I did that, and then I did that, and I made that kind of money just for saying that.
Let's do some more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then that helped me.
So what did that lead to?
Well, I ended up doing a Sprite commercial, a Coke commercial. I did a U.S. Olympic commercial with my favorite player, Kim Olajuwon. I did a commercial with Magic, American Express commercial. And then I did, I think, 2 or 3 TV shows as a basketball player. And then I did a featured film with the Wayne brothers and Kadeem. But then I stopped because as much as I enjoyed making the money,
Yes.
because I send the money back home,
Yes.
it wasn't me.
Yes.
I wasn't an actor. I was really doing it to get some money to send home.
Of course.
So I just stopped.
So
And-
speaking of playing a basketball player,
yeah.
how did that, you were in the NBA.
Well-
So how did that come about from this acting gig you've been doing?
Well, the acting was more financial. Let me get the
Yes.
money. The basketball was, I wanted it to be a job.
Yes.
And I also loved sports. So I said, you know what, as the more I played, people would always help.
Yes.
People would always try to give me, they saw that I was tall, I was fast, but I was really skinny also. And so people would always say, you should do this, you should do that, you should go over there. So whatever they told me, I would kind of follow their advice.
Yes.
They knew I didn't know, and I would go. And the more I listened, the more I learned, the more I would follow. I started going to UCLA and play basketball. I stopped playing, and I got to a point where I actually met Magic after the commercial years later at UCLA. And he asked that I keep coming to practice with him. And he had a travel club team that would go and play European teams. So through that, and then I met Kiki Vandeweghe, and I also met Mike Dunleavy, who was the coach for the Clippers at the time. And they had seen me play, and I actually know some people here who...
I heard.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't
So
believe
tell
it.
you and Happy played together
Yes,
years
yeah,
ago.
Years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
In fact, a friend of theirs was a trainer, and I couldn't afford a trainer. And his friend
Yes.
would train me for free. So
Awesome.
he would train me for free. He's like, look, you got a lot of potential. You could make it.
Yes.
So he would train me for free. And I went from like a skinny 190 to a good 255. But I mean, I've passed that now. But I
Never mind.
I was
Carry
a skinny
on
one.
with the story.
Yeah. So, and I was fortunate enough to then get invited to an NBA's big man's camp in Hawaii that was paid for. I was the only player there that wasn't a draft pick or I basically they found me through playing, and I got invited on behalf of the Clippers, and then Dunleavy was really interested in putting me on board with the team because we went from 15 and we would dwindle to 2 players.
And you were one of the two.
And I was one of the 2, and the other guy wasn't. We played 2 different positions, so we knew we weren't competing
You were
against each
competing
other.
for the same position.
Yeah, and he actually ended up being on the team for 3-4 years, but before you can make the team,
Yes.
you have to have a physical, and the physicals they're physicals. I mean, blood,
Grueling.
everything,
Yeah.
and they didn't know that I had broken my legs on a motorcycle previously. So when they saw metal plates in my legs, they were like, "Wait, are you okay?" I'm like, "You saw me play.
Yes.
You didn't.
This
question."
wasn't an issue until
yeah,
now.
it wasn't an issue until you did the physical, and then there was a little misgivings, and they started going back and forth. Are you sure it's okay? And come to find out, I get a call from an agent that I had met, who then told me that they were going to sign a veteran player. But weeks later, I get another call from a gentleman called Kiki Vandeweghe. Kiki Vandeweghe played for UCLA, played in the NBA, but I think it was his last or second last year with the Denver Nuggets. And he invited me, and same thing happened. The legs, the metal. So I said, you know what, forget it.
Yes.
But I always had this other dream of using the funds from basketball to help me start a business that I had always wanted to start.
Tell me about always wanting to. I mean, when did this idea come to you?
My dad used to be a truck driver. He used to transport goods from
All over
all
East
over.
Africa.
Yeah, from
Right.
all the way from the Congo, from the Congo through Uganda, to Kenya to the ports.
Yes.
Because Rwanda, Burundi, they're inland,
Yes.
so there's no port. So they would take goods to and fro. But my dad used to always used to mention about coffee. That always, not only him but other drivers, constantly taking coffee to the ports, constantly taking the coffee. Like, this must be a good business. But being young, you're focused on school, but you can hear adults talking.
Yes. Pick up on small things.
right.
Right.
So when I was here, I was shocked at how many coffee shops there were. One there, and I was like, they must be all doing well because they're open.
Yes.
And my dad had always said, look, get into the coffee business. So the plan was to play and get into the coffee business. So when that got cut short, I said, you know what, I'm going to go straight to the coffee business. And then that's when I started doing my homework, learning, trying to figure it out. But I had no coffee.
Right.
And I didn't know where to
And
start.
no customers.
I had no customers.
Yes.
Exactly. And a lot of people discouraged me because they was like, oh, Starbucks, how are you going to compete with Starbucks? I'm like, I'm not trying to compete with Starbucks, but I I want to start this business.
Yes.
So I kept, doing my homework. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And I knew that Rwanda had good coffee. It just wasn't out there.
It would
Again,
have been a good opportunity
right,
to introduce it.
right.
Yeah.
And at the time, the country was focused on fixing themselves.
Sure,
There was,
rebuilding.
Yeah, rebuilding. There was a lot of people that were being either going to jail or being forgiven, and this thing called gachacha, where the community kind of forgives the people or not forgive the people. So I did some research, and I found one company in Seattle that had Rwandan coffee. So I called the gentleman and asked him to send me some roasted coffee. So he sent me some roasted coffee. I liked it. It smelled great. So I invested some money. I think it was like $100. And I said, send me what you can for $100. And I think he sent me like 100 bags or something. Once he found out I was Rwandan, he gave me a great discount. And I started going door to door, I didn't have a name. I didn't have anything. I just knew sell coffee. Sell coffee that's from Rwanda. That way I can help the farmers, I can give back, and I start a business.
So who said yes?
So I went around, and the first person that said yes was a restaurant called Jar. And
That's not just any restaurant.
No. Jar, she's a famous celebrity chef, Suzanne Track, and she has one of the baddest restaurants. If you're in LA and West Hollywood, go to Jar. But even before then, everybody had told me that she's very hard to convince. She's got a specific palate. If she doesn't like it, she'll tell you she doesn't like it. So I didn't care. I was like, I know my coffee's good. I'm going to take it. So I took it. She had a pastry chef, her manager, herself. We tried it. And I think it was like 6 out of 8 picked my coffee. And, the coffee that I had bought,
Yes.
that was from Rwanda. Picked the coffee. And I knew exactly where I could get that coffee in Rwanda. And she loved it. She goes, okay, when can we start? Let's do the switchover. She walked away. She said, deal with the manager. We'll do the switchover. She goes, oh, by the way, as soon as you start, let's change the menu. I said, great. And I'm like, okay. We walk out. I walk out, and I freak out because I don't have any coffee.
You have no coffee.
I don't have any coffee. I just gave you the last few samples that I had, So I had a credit card that had...
But this is why you're an entrepreneur.
I had gotten a credit card that you put some money, what is it called? You put $500 down and your limit is basically $500.
Yes.
Prepaid, yeah. So I spent all the money
On the coffee.
on the coffee. I get the coffee here, I start supplying her. And I tell her, I said, is it okay if I can use you as a reference to, mention that you use our coffee? She goes, yeah, sure, no problem. She goes, I'll tell the people that I know. And she literally helped grow my company because every time I mentioned her name,
There's a seal of approval.
yes, everybody was like, oh, you, Suzanne? Oh, okay. And it changed. But the whole time, everywhere I went, initially I got so many no's. Everybody was like, Jack, well, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. I said, I have to do this. And to me, every time I got tired, I would think of home. I'd think of, there's people there that are way worse than I am. Thank you.
Press on.
So I would think of people back home and I go, press on. You got to do what you got to do. Meanwhile, I'm trying to still make some money on the side and, sell the brand and sell. So I decided, okay, how does this work? I asked, well, you're going to have to go to Van Nuys and register your company. And then you have to go. So I went to the bank. I said, well, I want to open a bank account, business account. Well, where are your papers? Well, what papers? Couldn't you just call it Silverback? So this whole time, everything is like one-on-one how to open a checking business account, one-on-one how to do this.
How to register a company.
Everything.
Yes.
Oh, you need this permit, you need that permit. I'm like,
So many
I'm
hurdles.
spending more money just to start.
Right.
Forget actually the product, just to start. I'm like, why do I need that just to do that? Why do I need? Oh, you have to. If you can't, well, I can't help you. So again, it goes to borrowing money, go do construction, make a quick $200, pay for that permit. So I eventually was able to get her the coffee. We started selling, and through her sales,
Yes.
she
Little
was,
capital.
because she had asked me, she said, okay, so what are our terms? I didn't know what terms were. I'm like, well, when do you want me to pay you? I go, can you pay me when I give you the invoice? And she goes, how about I pay you in 7 days? I go, okay, no problem. So I 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, let me go get
Let
my
me go get
check.
that check.
Yes, I go in there. Man, I found out they don't open until 12 because the restaurants, I didn't know that. So wait until 12 o'clock, get my money.
It's like 7.5 days.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, once I got her and I started making money through her business, I would go to the next person, and I would go to the next person.
Yes.
But then the next ones were actually harder than her, because even though she was more of taste and quality, she had her own equipment, her own coffee brewer, her own grinder, her own. Everybody else will go, we love your coffee, but are you going to supply the equipment? Because if we change...
So the big espresso makers.
Yes.
And
The other
frothers and
brand,
everything.
yes, is going to take their machines. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
And that would be a big outlay of cash.
Big,
Yeah.
yes. So someone said, just get a credit card. Now in Africa, before you come here, everybody
That's
tells
the
you,
no-no.
stay away from credit cards.
They're dangerous.
Oh my God, that's the first thing they say, pay cash for everything. So that's what I did.
Yes.
And then when I get here, they say, do you have any credit? I'm like, no, I pay
I pay
cash.
cash.
Isn't that better? No, you gotta have some credit. I was like, so,
There you go.
right, so yeah, what's your credit score? I don't know.
Right.
And so it got crazy. So I signed up for a credit card, and I think the max it gave me was 7,000. I was like, wow.
Is that enough for a coffee machine?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was full
Done.
right
Yeah.
away. I bought one, and then the next person wanted something. So I thought I was doing well because I was selling all these coffee all of a sudden.
Yes.
But really, I was in a hole because I had spent all these credit card stuff
Sure.
to purchase and get all these businesses. But I mean, it eventually started coming slowly. But
Right.
I had to run twice as fast just to take one step forward.
Totally.
But I could see the growth and I could see the change,
So take us forward to explain what's Silverback today. It's so many things.
Yeah, Silverback today is a company that put women co-ops that had nothing together back home. And we have helped grow their coffee immensely. We most recently just planted 400,000 new trees. We have grown, we have opened a savings account for them. We have hired over 87 women. We have helped them put kids to school. We have grown, we're now in airports, hotels, restaurants,
Trader Joe's.
We've got a lot of inquiry from In-N-Out to do a cold brew
Awesome.
for them. And we've gone into the Beverly Hilton Hotel. So it's grown and it's done well. And for me, it's like everybody had something to say about what makes them feel good.
Yes.
For me, it's honestly bringing people together, seeing them smile, making a difference that's still going to be there when you're gone. For me, is to know that, because, and I try to teach this to my son, you can have this house, this car, this, but it's all going to stay. And years from now, somebody else is going to live in that house that knows nothing about you. But if you leave something behind, that's when you've made a difference. So for me, to see those women laugh and smile, and we've taken pictures together, and know that their kid is sick and they can pay for it, that's, for me, it's, making them feel like they're part of this global economy.
Fantastic. What I so admire, Jack, is in your answer to what is Silverback Coffee, you never said a coffee company. You started with the women. You started with money in the pockets of people, able to take care of their family. And oh, by the way, this was all done because of coffee.
Yeah.
And that's commendable
Yeah.
and remarkable. So people can find you in Trader Joe's. You have a cafe in Los Angeles. You're at LAX in several of the terminals.
Correct.
And maybe Santa Barbara.
Hopefully.
There we hope, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah. And, there are several entrepreneurs in this room who I think would really hear your story and say, yep, I know that piece I share, things like that. So as we wrap up and have time for everybody to continue mingling, what would you leave us in terms of your, top 2 or 3 pieces of advice for entrepreneurs?
I think for me, number one for me was belief, just truly believing, because I didn't go to business school. I didn't have a business plan. Everybody kept saying, write a business. I'm like, why? It's in my head. I know what I want to do. So belief for me is huge, because as long as you know that, yes, there's going to be obstacles, but for me, I'm like, well, if there's something in my way, I'm either going to go around it, over it, under it, but I'll keep moving.
Yes.
There'll be a speed bump somewhere. Now, I say this because it's not for everyone. Some people need business plans, need to write it out, but as long as there's belief, that's a good thing. And then accepting help. Because there's times I wanted to do things on my own because I thought I wanted to do it a certain way. But what I realized is I would always go backwards because there was something that I forgot to do. And had I accepted the help, I think I'd have been further along faster. But accepting help and just refusing to say die. Refusing to say die and keep going, because if you can picture it in your head, just go for it.
That's the first part of realizing something, is being able to visualize it.
Because everybody kept asking me questions. Not everybody, the majority would ask me a question that was a roadblock. It wasn't a comment or a statement to help me achieve something. It was like, what if this? What if that? They wasn't more like, do this because it'll help you do that.
Yes.
But I always knew what I wanted to do when that roadblock got there. And again, it's not for everyone to do it that way. But if you have a system and plan in your head, I say go for it. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Jack was nice enough to roast some coffee for everybody here. So before you leave, feel free to help yourself to one of the bags of Silverback coffee. And we have plenty more time to be together, to eat, to drink, obviously to be able to chat with Jack more. But I so appreciate your honesty, going places that probably weren't fun to relive or remember. But as several people said, it's through storytelling that we're able to connect to each other and to humanity.
Yep.
So thank you for
being
brave.
Thank you for coming.
And for being here. And thank all of you. Thank you, Jack. Yeah. Super.
Thank you. You're probably wondering why Silverback, the name. Where the coffee is grown is in the northern part of Rwanda. It's called Musanze. It used to be called Ruhengeri. It's now called Musanze. That's where most of the gorillas' habitat are. And that's where my family is from also. So we put together coffee, Silverback coffee. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.